The topic today is 7 CMO mistakes that will get them fired this year and what CEOs wish their CMOs knew. So, Chris, if you want to go to the next slide. Just as a little bit of a background on No Typical Moments, the way we define our organization is that for growth stage organizations, NTM is a growth marketing agency that enters your business at the inflection point when you are ready to scale. Our deep bench of marketing experts in online education becomes a natural extension of your internal team, which enables you to reach 7+ figures. With strategic and tactical implementation without the headache of the hiring process. NTM applies its impact with profit methodology with a proven track record of success of 10 years. And today, both of the Chris's are going to be handling the presentation. Both are very accomplished CMOs throughout their career. And Chris, if you want to go to the next slide. What they're going to be talking through today is a few agenda items. So we want to really get into the head of what CEOs want to arm everyone here today with the proper ammunition so they can be great CMOs for their organization. In our opinion, the 7 mistakes CMOs make and how we can all avoid them, and then giving some practical information on building your plan. So Chris, if you want to go to the next one, and I'm going to let both of the Chris's take it from here for today. And this is going to be roughly about a 35-minute content-filled presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat throughout the dialogue, and then we'll have a Q&A session afterwards.
Thank you, Andrew. So I'll go ahead and introduce myself, and then I'm going to have the other Chris Paluta, introduce herself. So just a little bit about me. My name is Chris Dion. I've been working with No Typical Moments for more than a few years now. It's time is flying. But as Andrew mentioned, I did work as either VP of Marketing or Chief Marketing Officers at a few companies. Most of them were early stage startups, fast growth. So, for example, one was Pro Flowers. We were selling flowers over the internet in early e-commerce heydays. We sold that company. We went public and then sold it to FTD. Another one was called Real Age, which is the biological age of your body, based on how well you've maintained it. We sold that to Hearst. Another one was Pathway Genomics. We went into competition with 23andMe until the federal government didn't like us doing that anymore. So I did a lot of different things. So we're going to be coming from the CMO side, both Chris and I, and because we have played that role, and just share some insights. Chris, do you want to just talk a little bit about yourself?
Sure. And just to age myself, Chris and I started working together 25 years ago,
yeah,
something like that, when the internet was just starting to explode and the ability to measure things online was coming into play. So like Chris said, we've both been CMOs, VPs of marketing, and we've both done our own entrepreneurial ventures as well. And then I've been working with No Typical Moments, I think about 5 years now. So it's been a spot of time there too, being a fractional CMO for different companies as well. So it's been interesting to do it on the in-house side where you're working 90 hours a week, and then coming in and doing it as a fractional CMO for several companies. So you can sort of leverage what you're seeing across different companies across the board, which has been fun and interesting. And hopefully it'll bring some insight in this presentation.
Got it. Thank you, Chris. Okay, so one of the things that we're talking about today is, mistakes that CMOs make, but more importantly, it's really diving into what CEOs want out of their chief marketing officer. And first of all, what we're putting in front of you right now is the Gartner research report, which they interviewed, I think it was 2,300 CEOs, asking them what their top priorities are. And you can see them right here. There are 3 things I'd like you to look at when looking at this. Number 1 is look at cost management right in the middle, and look at that green arrow over on the right going up 69%. Look at the bottom one, which is efficiency and productivity, and that arrow going up 46%, right? So, and then we'll talk about environmental sustainability separate. But what we're seeing is because of the economic environment, which is not necessarily bad. It's just unpredictable and bizarre. It's creating some sorts of anxiety within the CEO realm. So therefore, the CEO is oftentimes looking for ways to make things more stable, more predictable, and higher profitability going forward. Okay. So as a CMO, those are some things you're looking at. Also do notice environmental sustainability going up. Customer is going down. I don't think it's because the CEO doesn't want individuals to focus on the customer. It's just that environmental sustainability and cost management all of a sudden popped up above the customer. So because those are our top issues. So I just want to note, always growth is the number one issue with the CEO. Technology is always at the top of the list. And so is workforce. These are normal. And you think that workforce is a new thing being at the top of the list? It's always top of the list. So let's dive into the mistakes. I'm going to go ahead and start off. So as it relates to this slide, and based off of what we mentioned, according to the Gartner report, which I read in depth, the CEO is seeing inflationary prices hit them hard. They therefore want to maintain their profitability, and they believe that the number one way to do it is for them to also increase prices. So they look at the CMO to make the guidance, build the strategy, and provide insights to the CEO on what the prices should be. It's part of the price, product, place, promotion, the 4 Ps that the marketer focuses on. What the CEO doesn't want to just think of, that the marketer is only focused on how do I advertise or how do I optimize the product. There's still the place and the price that the marketer needs to focus on. So I'm going to just read off some pricing strategies that people forget to think about. Okay. And if you go do a search, or even now just go on Bard or ChatGPT, you can look up, top 25 pricing strategies and see what fits your company. But don't forget, there are cost plus, competitive, penetrative, skimmer, value-based pricing, dynamic pricing, bundled pricing, premiums, psychological pricing, and loss leaders. Those are 10 different types of pricing strategies. There's 40 or 50 pricing strategies. But just knowing what pricing strategy you have, and then, which is part of your research, and then A/B testing, and then building it into what the CFO may have in their model. So I'm sorry I talked so much on this one, Chris. I don't know if you have any other comments.
I was just going to say that the pricing is often the most complicated area of marketing, because what your customers say they might pay versus what they actually pay, and when you go and do some preliminary testing. I mean, the pricing one is one that it's until you actually have people buying it, you don't know for sure. So it takes real testing on this to make sure that that number is right. And oftentimes you might not change the product, but you do need to add that element of perceived value to go along with the price. And so those are components that you spend a lot of time and energy testing.
Good point. As a matter of fact, Chris and I were talking about this just last week, and we said, it's funny. Almost every single one of our clients ask, are we pricing our product correctly? It's a very common question, right?
And we've seen people price things too low. I can't even tell you the amount of times that raising the price has ended up perceived value goes up and people buy more of it. And why sometimes free lead magnets don't lead to the caliber of the client you're looking for. I mean, there's so many different psychological strategies that go along with pricing too.
So just to recap, mistake number 1, not focusing on pricing. move on to the, do you have any other comments before moving on to the next one? Okay,
No.
mistake number 2, not focusing on modern best practices. Remember, the CEO wants to see growth, year over year growth. The number one issue with the CEO is growth, right? So they want to know that you are using the most up-to-date best practices, whether it's D2C, B2B, B2B2C, whatever it is, right? So sometimes the question is what are modern best practices? It seems like the COVID world kind of shifted things around both in D2C and B2B. Things that might have worked pre 2019 might not work now, right? So it's about knowing and implementing strategies and tactics that are working today. So how do you know what are working, right? So I have my ways, and maybe Chris can share her ways. But number one is I have a group of other CMOs that I speak with on a regular basis, and I ask them. So rather than just reading something online that telling me something works, I'm not sure if reading it online is always the best idea. It could lead you astray. But when you talk to another marketer, they may give you the inside scoop as to what's working and what's not.
I'm
Any
with Chris
thoughts there?
on that. Yeah, I'm with you on that one, because you'll read an article and then it turns out that and it wants you to perceive things in a certain way. And then you'll find out that the truth is that particular thing wasn't actually very profitable. It had high revenue, but it didn't have high profit. And over here, we had something that has much higher profit. So the actual talking to people that are willing to give you the truth on what's working, how it's working, the underneath the hood stuff. And like Chris, I have that same, group of CMOs where we're willing to share. We're usually in a little bit different non-competing things, so there's no concern, and we've known each other a while, but finding a group that you can be transparent and share data, so it's not just your own data. You now have access to however many people are willing to share their data. That's huge for growing and keeping in front of the trends.
I'll share one story. This is an older story. When I was head of marketing at Pro Flowers, we were chugging along. I was running into some marketing challenges, and I noticed this company that everybody loved. Everybody in the company loved it. I talked to my friends, they loved it. It was called Red Envelope. And I'm like, what are they doing? They're doing such a great job. So I picked up the phone and I called their VP of marketing. Never talked to their VP of marketing before. And I talked to her. I'm like, it looks like what you're doing is working really well. And she goes, it does look like that, doesn't it? And I'm like, it's not. She goes, no, we are wildly unprofitable and we are hurting badly. And I'm like, but it looks like you're doing great. She goes, no, we're just spending money. And so I went to my CEO. I explained it to him. 6 months later, we owned Red Envelope. We went in and bought them because we realized there's an opportunity here. And then we fixed their marketing. So just because you see something or read something doesn't mean it's necessarily true. If you could talk to the marketing individual, it'll give you a deeper insight. Next, mistake number 3, not focusing on traditional best practices. Some companies and the CEOs get angry. Some CMOs are only focused on the shiny little object. They're only focused on the newest idea and forgetting that some of the traditional things are probably just as effective, if not even more effective. Any thoughts there, Chris?
I just can't tell you how many times I've seen articles or heard email is dead. That particular email is dead is the lead in for an article a million times. I don't know a single company that doesn't still make money off of their email marketing. And most companies, it's one of the top 3 ways that they're making money. So, and then just to talk with the traditional best practices, all different tracking systems have come over time where it's going to allow you to customize or do this, and people get all excited about that, and they forget to make sure that their messaging is on point, that they have the right target market, that some of these traditional foundational pieces are there, which none of that cool shiny stuff matters if you don't have that dialed in. So just to add to Chris's point.
Also, in the area of direct mail and postcards, we're implementing that. I'm implementing that right now for 2 clients. Let me tell you about how one has implemented it. They reached out to their top ideal customers and asked for their postal address. Said, I want to send you something, didn't say what they wanted to send. Some of the CEOs responded with personal home addresses, some with their work address, and we sent them a package. It was a massively high response rate. Keep in mind, the direct mail or something like this works if you have a high lifetime value, because the cost of the campaign can be 3 times higher than a digital or 5 times higher than a digital campaign, but the ROI can be 10 times higher. So traditional best practices may even work better now than they used to. Mistake number 4, not implementing AI. Chris, I'll let you start on that.
Yeah, it's such a game changer for the speed with which you can get things done. Because ultimately, we're going to talk more about testing later, but AI gives you the ability to brainstorm. It gives you the ability to come up with different sets of copy and different tone. It gives you the ability to do so many things so much faster. You can be testing out lead magnets, ads, all these different things in minutes. So if you're not using AI in some component, you're wasting some time. And even just the note takers. I was on a meeting earlier and the note taker wasn't working. And the client was like, I don't think I can live without that. My own notes are just never as rich and deep. And we miss something. Yeah, it's gotten that good.
And a lot of marketers, according to the newest numbers, and the numbers keep on getting updated, I think 57% of marketers are using AI on a regular or daily basis. But oftentimes they're just using the LLM, the ChatGPT or Bards. And sometimes they're not even using the Midjourneys or other graphic generators. But there are many other AI tools that will probably greatly enhance what you're doing at a faster rate, like improving your funnel flow, because there's specific software for that, or even sales chat or sales agent or conversion rates, or even the ability to optimize and personalize the page somebody lands on based off of who's visiting it using AI. Those are other tools that you can use and implement in order to increase sales dramatically pretty fast. And if you need this is a plug for us right here, but if you need an evaluation of what you're doing and how you can use AI, we have a pilot program to look into like what you should be doing and possibly even testing those before implementing them yourself. Mistake number 5, not understanding the difference between cash flow versus revenue versus profit. Okay, I am seeing this becoming a much bigger issue in 2023 than in years in past. And the CEO wants to let you know that thank you for sharing with me the lifetime value of the customer, but I need to make payroll this month. Okay, so what that means is in the past, and you should still currently, but in the past, you have a cost to acquire a customer and a lifetime value of the customer. Your cost per customer needs to be less than the lifetime value. But if that lifetime value of the customer takes 5 years to gain, right, to get that lifetime value, it takes a long time to get there. There may be some cash flows along that 5-year frame. So some companies, marketers right now, do a cost per customer, a 1-year payback, and then a lifetime value. And that the 1-year payback number needs to be higher than that cost to acquire. So that is something that we're seeing more and more, because you need to make sure that you have revenue. I have one client that has raised $32 million. They have enough revenue, and they still said, look, we're uncertain of the future economies of the world because of things going on in socioeconomic situations. So we therefore are watching our cash flow very carefully, and we want to make sure to have 1 year payback.
And this is where the different departments really need to communicate too. Like the CFO and the CMO are talking to each other. They're building the waterfall forecasting documents for both expenditures and profits. Because if you're only looking at one part, like let's say you're looking at your revenue, but you're not looking at how your other costs are creeping up, you can end up in that cash flow crunch. And it happens to companies all the time without realizing it. And a lot of it can be fixed with really good communication between CFO and CMO.
And the CEO is looking for you to know and acknowledge that this is something that you are aware of, and make suggestions that helps cash flow. And I just put in here, like, it may be optimizing payment terms, gross margin, ways to track ROI, anything that helps the CEO with their job. Next, mistake number 6, not building a flexible, scalable marketing team. This tackles 3 of the concerns that the CEO had in that thing that we mentioned. It tackles the workforce, tackles cost, and it tackles productivity and efficiency. Those are 3 major issues that the CEO has. Did you have a comment there, Chris?
Well, I was just thinking, there's like books written about this too. I was thinking some great books, but they say it takes at least a year for a new person to get up to speed, right? Understanding really what the business is about, understanding the player. So if you have a player that can fit in one spot, when things change, it could be adaptable. That's a whole year of bringing someone up to speed you're not paying for. So it's such an important part. And I think we forget that. I've heard that in different companies that I've been in. They're like, oh, we'll swap out the sales force. I'm like, there's opportunity costs there that aren't being accounted for. So hiring the people who have flexibility is huge, and growth mindset, right? That they're willing to learn new things and adjust as well.
And I even put a note down here. I'm not even hiding that this is a plug for No Typical Moments. It really is, but it's also true. Having an agency that has a team of A players that knows and understands your business, that you don't have to retrain because of what Chris just mentioned, right? That can scale up and down. So let's say you run into a quarter that's a challenge and you need to let a few people go. If you need to let a few people go and reduce it on our side, it's a lot easier for us to do it than you to do it. Or the same happens. You need to increase, like I need to scale up everything we're doing by 30% next month. You don't have the time to hire people. We have the team to be able to put it in place. We can scale up and down a little bit faster than possibly you can. Mistake number 7, having all your eggs in one basket. Chris?
I've just seen this one being such a huge problem so many times. I'm thinking when iOS 14 came out, and so many people, their sole revenue channel was Facebook. And then all of a sudden your targeting ability changed on Facebook because of that. And there were multitudes of companies that ran into cash flow problems because now their only source of revenue stopped being profitable. I've seen this not just then, there's just time and time again. If you don't have multiple channels that you're getting your people coming in from, your top of funnel, it puts you in a really precarious situation. And so this is one of those areas where good companies typically always have a test budget going, so that they're constantly finding new channels, new places, new niches, new different areas that could be expanded if necessary. And the rule of thumb that I've seen work well is 20% of marketing spend is test spend. And a big part of that is testing different channels. And Chris, I know you have thoughts on this too.
Strong thoughts. So I'll explain this with a story. When I was younger, I was marketing manager for TurboTax. And Chris Paluta, you've heard this story many times. But when I was marketing manager at TurboTax, at the time, I was given a bonus, which was in the form of stock, which was awesome, right? For Intuit, right? Stock bonus if I met certain goals. And my boss came in and said, hey, I want you to put 20% of what you're doing towards testing new ideas. And I looked at him and I said, I will not be able to hit my goals if I have to spend money on ideas that may fail. I know that if I put more money towards what's currently working, then I'll make my goals, and because I know it'll increase sales and revenue. And he said, nope, you're going to put 20% aside. You're going to test it. You'll only be graded on the 80%, not on the 20%. But it was necessary for us to test the 20% because he said, I don't know that those fundamental ideas that you're testing now will work next year. We have to test the new ideas this year for figuring out what will work next year, even if there's some failure in there. So our rule of thumb at Intuit at the time was I had to put 20% of my budget towards testing new ideas.
And also, oh, sorry, Chris,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, otherwise we'd still be doing magazine print ads, instead of, more sophisticated digital marketing, right? You have to be testing the new ideas.
For sure. And watching too, when radio used to work really well. And then as that change in landscape has happened, radio has completely different rates than it used to. But I was thinking same thing when I was head of marketing for US Search. We had a deal with Yahoo and it was like a $13 million deal. And we basically owned when people were searching for other people. And I went in and I'm like, we need a test budget because who knows if that deal will go away. Yahoo's shifting, things could happen. And so started finding other channels. And then like 2 months later, Yahoo announced that they were doing their own thing. So our major channel went away. But fortunately, we had Classmates. We had a couple different avenues that we'd found how to work out, but it took a while. Like Classmates was not profitable at first. It took a ton of finessing to find the right spots. And then that ended up being our biggest channel. But always having a foot into new channels was crucial for success.
I want to jump in real quick as I have a question. I want to open up to questions for everyone who's here today. The first off, I just want to share that anyone who's here and listening, we are going to be doing a free marketing audit call for anyone who wants to partake in that. Jenna's right on it. She shared the little form we have. So if anyone wants to jump on a consultant call with one of the Chris's, more than happy to do that for anyone who's here. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat so we can get to them. A question I wanted to ask the Chris's is related to mistake number 7. I'm already thinking a year in advance of the 2024 election. And that's going to cause a whole whirlwind in the online space and how people are directing their marketing, their advertising efforts. What advice would you give to someone kind of a year out of if their eggs are all in, Facebook's basket then, and costs are rising so drastically in Q4, what they could do, or however else you want to kind of gear that dialogue?
You first, Chris, or me?
You, if you've got something, I'm thinking about it.
I did not prepare either of them for this question, so they're going right off the cusp.
It is a really tough question. So here is where this concept comes into play. So I am currently, actually, Chris and I belong to a couple of CMO groups, and we're discussing new ideas because there's a couple of things happening. Facebook can be volatile, and especially in the direct-to-consumer place. LinkedIn can also be volatile in the B2B world. We're looking for new avenues, and right now, some are okay, meaning they're converting, but they don't seem to be scalable. So we're continuing to test down those realms. Or it's ways to improve the conversions on those current platforms. Are there other things that we can do to increase conversions on Facebook, even if the price goes up? Are there, right now, I'm specifically looking, are there things that I can do to increase conversions on LinkedIn, even though the price will go up? And I'm looking at, Andrew, I think you know, I'm looking at everything from AI avatars, more advanced engaged video advertising campaigns on YouTube, things like that right now. And one last thing is direct mail. I know direct mail is really big come the election time. So we would do direct mail before and after that time frame. But there's something about some of the traditional marketing avenues that might be worth playing around.
I also think, I mean, this isn't exactly online with what, like, where else to be, but I do think that people get so tired of hearing some of the political stuff that there are some tongue-in-cheek ad campaigns you can use that are a little irreverent about the fact that they're getting hit with so many political ads. I saw that last election. I saw that some companies that could play around with that have a lot of success with that. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
I will say this. I feel very strongly that there will be a decrease in demand and conversions come this election timeframe for most companies.
Yeah.
So you better prepare now. And I think that's what you're saying, Andrew. I feel very strong. When I worked at a catalog company many years ago, back when there were catalogs, before it went all online. And we did, that company was around for 40 or 50 years, and they saw every 4 years decreases in sales come that November. But they saw major decreases when it was a volatile campaign. So I think we will see it.
I also think it's a good time. You know, a lot of companies don't know when the right time is to start really looking internally for referral programs, and when do you really tap your own audience for their friends and that kind of thing. I think that's a good time to get really good, solid referral campaigns going, and to add extra products and extra bonuses to increase lifetime value of your existing customer list, because you can talk to them in a way that, like, you have more familiarity. And most companies leave something on the table for that. That's always like great unmined gold yard, if you will.
Awesome. I saw a few questions pop in. If the Chris's, you want to start answering some of these.
Oh yeah. And I know, Chris, you had there were some other mistakes at some point too, if we want to look at that.
Oh yes, I totally cut off the last bit of your presentation.
That's okay. These might
Yeah,
be
let's
the
go through
questions.
those, and then we'll go to the chat as I see Blake, Amanda, and Dave had some things.
I'm going to go through these really quickly. One is testing and growing versus go all in on one campaign that blows the budget. We kind of were just talking about that in the previous slide. Top of funnel versus bottom of funnel content. So the concept behind that is a lot of times marketers are focused on what's the content to get people become aware of us and into the top, versus what are we providing the sales team or at the time of sale or point of sale to convert. The difference between brand versus marketing versus sales, meaning I'm more of a traditional direct marketer. So my focus and style of marketing is designed to get to the revenue or the close as soon as possible. But there is a difference between the brand and direct marketing. but they don't need to clash with one another. They can combine with one another nicely. Losing track of customer and what's going on for them, meaning, you want to dive into that, Chris?
Yeah, that's just, I mean, I think that's related back to what I was saying too. If you stop realizing what the customer experience is like, you often leave a lot on the table. But if you're constantly aware of what that customer experience is like, and you're ahead of problems and you're talking to it, that customer ends up being your biggest advertiser, right? So making sure you're knowing where they're at and what's happening for them is huge. It's usually low-hanging fruit for wins.
Thinking,
Google
go ahead.
search. Yeah,
Yeah, go
thinking
ahead.
Google search is always better than customer research. I mean, again, there's so many things that people write and say that aren't the deeper truth. And real, primary customer research is such an invaluable source, even for the linguistic patterns, because if you can appear psychic to your customers, they're like, oh my God, you know my pain, you know what I'm thinking. Then all of a sudden they trust you and they're way more willing to take your product. And you get that language from primary customer research.
Many companies don't have the budgets to pay for an external primary research firm, but if you do have the budget for it, it's worth it, because that's what they do for a living and they're really, really good at it. And also they don't come at it with the bias that you have. So if you have the budget to do deeper primary customer research, I suggest doing it.
Sure.
Last one, or not, second last one, not tracking your advertising campaigns so nobody knows what's producing the actual results. Chris, you want to talk about it first?
No, it's just funny because Chris and I actually co-founded a company that monitored advertising effectiveness long ago, because that was crucial. I mean, you'd see someone would think a particular channel wasn't working, and it would actually turn out that 10%, there was one area or one ad that was working within that channel, but they just shut it off because they didn't know, because the ad campaign wasn't being tracked properly or tracked at all. I still see this all the time where, there's great ads or great target groups or all these different things, but if they don't have it tracked properly, you just don't know.
So the other thing, and this relates to Blake's question in chat, which is, well, should I, what happens if the CEO says, should I turn off all the channels not working? So let's see if I worded that. Let's cancel all channels not working. Okay, so we did that for a client not too long ago, Chris and I. And what was interesting is when we paused all those channels not working, the overall sales went down considerably more than the amount that was directly trackable. Okay, if that makes sense. So that means from the Google campaigns and the Facebook campaigns, when we paused them, the sales went down lower than the amount that we showed in our sales line. So there was a lot of sales coming in that were not directly attributable to Facebook and Google. So by pausing it, we were able to identify it. There's a problem with pausing campaigns. When you pause Facebook, when you pause LinkedIn, when you pause Google, if you pause them, it resets your score to 0, meaning you've lost everything that you've done in the past. So don't pause them. You can reduce the budget amount to $10 a day or $1 a day or something else other than pausing them, because you don't want to lose your history. So number one. Number two is you could do a test like that. You could pause them all or shut them way down and see what the effect is. The bummer part about that is it took 30 days before we saw the effect. That was 30 days of lost revenue. So it's a scary test to do. But we were able to prove to that client that the overall, all the campaigns running lifted the entire boat up, if that makes sense. And in the B2B world, it's very difficult to actually attribute the sale all the way back, because there's multiple touch points. So which touch point generated that sale? It's probably not one touch point. It's probably 4 touch points that help generate the sale. So how do you track that? It becomes a little bit more of a challenge. Last one is not shutting off campaigns that don't work, even if you have an emotional attachment to them or the team executing them. That one kind of speaks to themselves, but anybody want to comment on that, Chris?
I mean, that one is so self-explanatory, but I mean, we have that, right? Some legacy campaign that it used to be the most effective and we just kind of still think it is. I mean, and that was radio for one of our clients where it was, that was such a great channel for such a long time and it was dwindling over time, and the people managing it, like, hey, if you could retrain a team member to do something else for a channel that's not working, especially when you have new things that are working. And if you've got proper tracking in there to see that there isn't some multi-channel attribution that's just not being looked at. I mean, for that one, I think we ended up stopping radio in one region and looking across the board to find out that there was not a lot of attribution that we were missing. So we stopped it in parts, and then we found that became, like, radio ended up not being nearly as effective as other print and digital channels for us. So I think, yeah, don't hold on too long when you know it's not working.
Oops. We can still stay on here if you wish.
Yeah, and then I see there was some more. I'm going through the questions too. Oh no, I was done with that one. If you wanted to go to the next slide, and then we've got a couple of questions we haven't answered yet. One about communication, I think would be.
Okay, so communication with the CEO is one of the questions. So what's interesting about that specific question is oftentimes the CEO initiates the communication process, and that you would follow their process. If they don't have a process to follow, then you would be implementing your own. I have recently, I would say in the last 5 years, adopted the traction model for marketing. So traction is the EOS, what do you call it? Management style of understanding what your most important things that you need to implement over a quarterly time frame period. And those items, those big 5 or 6 items, those most important movers, if you didn't move them, the company would either fail or not grow. So you identify those 5. You have the milestones, who the owners are, and what's getting in the way of you getting them done. And then below that, you have a lot of the other tasks that you're probably doing on a day-to-day that you need to communicate with the CEO, but aren't as critical as those top 5. So I worked with a few companies that implemented this EOS traction model, and we found that to be a pretty good way of communicating the top issues with the CEO, and also ensure that not too many other, let's call it CEO-led initiatives, sneak into the program that hijack your workload, which can sometimes happen. CEO pops into your offices and says, hey, I have an idea. And next thing you know, 30% of your day is spent on that idea.
I have a great story for that, Chris. There was I think she was a VP of customer experience or something. She actually wasn't marketing, but the CEO popped into her office all the time with that type of thing. She had a Post-it on her computer, and it was like the 3 top things. And so every time he'd pop in with one of those, she would be like, which of these do you want to cross off to add that on? Because
yeah, that's a good idea.
Because I mean, if you have, not all CEOs are like that. He was like, I want the new fast blah, blah, blah all the time. So that was her little, like, I'm staying focused on these unless you tell me one of these is coming off, which was really helpful.
I have a question to expand upon this is, do you see a difference of someone who's the CEO? And what I mean by that, I believe it was Bumble the other day is bringing in a new CEO from Slack, someone new. It's clear, I'm being brought in for strategic growth goals, take us to the next level, versus someone who might be the CEO founder and, it's their baby as well. And maybe they have, emotional baggage as well. And it's like, turn off that campaign, but it's like, oh, but I love so-and-so, they've been with me for 15 years. I'm making out that scenario, but how do you treat maybe the two of these different?
It's not always that though. I'm thinking, I'm not going to name the name of the company, but Chris will know one I'm talking about that he worked with for a long time, that it wasn't the original founder or his idea, but totally like ADD, get excited about shiny objects, move from one to the next without seeing if the prior test was completed or done. So it can be just a personality too. It's not always that it's the founder CEO.
True. I have, though, found that founders, in order to be a founder, you're a risk taker. You're a little bit more of a bold ideas kind of an individual. You want things done super duper fast. You tend to be that kind of less process oriented. And therefore, I've implemented A/B/C testing. A/B test is the control versus what I believe, based on marketing, we need to be testing. The C is the CEO test. And I always keep a little allotted line for things that the CEO, because even though you might be able to control some of the ideas flipping through that you can test, but you just can't stop them all. So plan on implementing some of the CEO tests, number one. Number two is I have often found that the founder is right. I will be doing the CEO test and I'm like, keeps on telling me I need to do that. She tells me I needed to do that. I don't think it's the right thing to do, and I'll do it. And lo and behold, it works. Something intuitive or innate in them creating the idea of the company. They know the market, they know their product. You got to listen to them. If they have ideas from testing, you have to take them seriously.
I think one thing that's true that I've learned over 20 years of plus of doing this is that we don't know, right? We have to test. Like I may be very good and I'm still not going to call it more than 51% of the time. Like if I'm not testing, I'm being too arrogant. I'm allowing my own sense of like, oh, I know this and I'm good at it, to outweigh the fact that we have to test this stuff. So to your point, Chris, the CEO test and all of the testing, I mean, I just think testing is so important and not everybody spends enough energy on actually testing the things that need to be tested.
Another thing to think about, I just mentioned the founder or CEO having great ideas. There's one other group in the company that I've always seen present winning test results.
Can I guess?
Okay, go ahead.
Is customer service?
Yep, customer service.
Touching the customer. Yeah.
Yep. They've always had, like, I take the ideas almost directly, put them into the Facebook ad, and boom, it converts.
They're touching the customer all day long. They know what the customer's pain points are. They know what the customer wants different. Yeah.
So let's go back to the chat before we head off, just to make sure these questions are all answered. I see Dave, we just were talking about that. Blake, thank you for all the chats. I think you're referring to Chris as this dude is smart. So Chris, you got a flower from Blake over here. Anything else you see, Chris and Chris, that we haven't hit on from some of Blake's comments or questions?
I think that's it. They can reach out to us anytime. I mean, if they have thoughts too, I love them.
Blake or Dave, anything you're noticing if you're still here that we have not answered for you all before we head off? And once again, what Jenna just put in, if you would like to take us up on that free marketing audit consultant call, it's right there. That's my email address as well. So I think we can wrap up, and thank you all for attending. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you. See you.